All right, Andrew Easton with the ESUCC, and I'm super grateful to Annette Wisey from ESU 5 for joining us for a conversation where we're going to talk about kind of a myriad of things really over a 3-part video where we're going to cover norms, procedures, and routines. We're going to focus this time specifically on establishing norms, and so very grateful to Annette for sharing her expertise on this topic. This is going to be a really good exploration of things, and so Annette, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to you and let you start to kind of talk us through how we can establish norms in that remote setting.
Okay. Yeah, so kind of thinking about the pandemic that's going on right now, we've got a lot of schools that are in live classrooms right now, but of course there's always that threat there that maybe we're not going to have enough substitute teachers to be able to actually continue in a live setting and might have to go online for a period of time. So you know that in the beginning of the regular school year, when you're live and physically in your classroom, teachers do a great job of spending time building those norms and procedures and routines with their kids. In fact, they'll spend a couple weeks at the beginning of the year doing that. So when we move into that online environment, oftentimes we kind of think that that's already set, but yet you're in a new classroom now. Truly, you're in a different type of environment. So some of those procedures and routines may or may not work very well, and there might be some additional norms or some changes to your norms that have to happen because you're not physically together anymore. You're now in that online place. So when you go to that online environment, it is important to think, well, I'm back at the beginning. I'm going to have to spend some time again, probably not a couple of weeks like you did at the beginning of the year. It's more a short day or two going back and revisiting what you have in place and how does that look now with kids. So going to have to go back to the beginning. So things don't have to completely change. It truly is just a tweaking of some of the things that already exist, but it is important to go back and look at those because they definitely look different. How do kids hand in assignments? If you haven't been using like a Canvas type environment, that may be different than it was before. Norms might have to change because we're not physically there. You can't use some of your tools like proximity control. You can't use it, kids, because you're not right there physically with them. So you can't walk by and just stand by the kid that's misbehaving or put a hand on their shoulder. You're going to have to do some things differently. So looking at those norms and how do things change is going to be important for you. So the science world has a really nice process in place for establishing norms with kids. And you know, the instructional models talk about establishing those rules and procedures, those norms, if you will, with kids, allowing them to have input in that. And I know when I was teaching, I tried to do that from blank piece of paper, you know, just, okay, kids, what do you think are rules and procedures? What should those look like? What should those be? You can do that, but you kind of want to be the puppet master and guide kids in the direction because we all as teachers have a pretty good idea of what we want those norms to look like. So how do we get that out of the kids? So in the science world, and especially with the Open SciEd materials at the middle school level, they've got this great process where they have established 4 buckets, if you will, that kids are going to look at in their norm setting. So those are the bold headlines in each of these boxes here that you see. So the buckets are respectful, equitable, committed to the community, and moving our thinking forward. So really the establishing of those norms is talking about what does that look like? What does it look like if we're respectful? And getting input from the kids on what that looks like. So what you see on the screen are just some examples that I've put on there that came out of some adult sessions that I've done in the past. So kid language might look a little different, especially if you're elementary compared to high school. But they would probably say many of these same things. So that's what they'd look like probably from your live physical classroom. So if you go into the online classroom, they may have to change a little bit. And not that any of those necessarily disappeared, because those things are good norms for kids to have. But there might be some different things. So in the orange here now, you're going to see there's some other ideas of some norms that might have to exist now because you're in an online environment instead. So things like keeping what you put in the chat relevant to the topic. You know, we've all had experiences where something's been put in the chat that's completely a squirrel and off topic, but keeping that relevant is what moves our thinking forward. Be in a quiet place, free of distractions, so everyone can think. We've also been in those Zooms where someone has had background noise or something else going on that interferes. So there's just some examples there of how those norms might change now that you're online. But again, it would be important to bring up your initial norms with kids and talk it through with them. These are our norms when we're physically in the classroom, but now that we're in this online environment, what looks different? How do we need to change? What do we need to add to this list? And again, eliciting ideas from kids on how that looks differently. So I just think the science world has done, that Open SciEd group has done a great job with the norm setting. And it even though it's built out of the science world, it definitely is applicable to any content area. Doesn't matter. Those are the things you want happening in all the different contents that you might teach. So it's just a nice process that you can choose to use.
Yeah, I love everything about that, from the process by which you create those norms to how those are still prevalent in your Zoom space or online, but they're extended. And thank you, because I think that was a really great visual to kind of present that across those 4 buckets, like you said, that are a part of that Open SciEd, those resources. And so really appreciate you sharing in this format, and would encourage any educators checking this out on our teacher page to watch the 2 videos that are going to follow this, where we're going to get into a little bit more regarding norms and kind of some check-ins with that, and then also the one on procedures and routines. And so we'll have Annette back for those 2 video pieces as well. So thank you for your time, and definitely stay tuned for those other 2.